Well, over the last year or so, we sure have put these Lexani LX20s to the test.
Oh my God! It is like a race car.
275 35 19s in the rear, 255 40 19s in the front. We have pushed these tires through all sorts of conditions, from multiple 0 to 60 launches to several aggressive and spirited mountain runs, from swinging the car around a bit in the rain to just burnouts in random parking lots, all the way to just seeing how far we can spin the tires and how many gears we can get through. I've had 2 full summers on these tires, and I drove this car all winter long. Now granted, it's a South Carolina winter, but we did reach freezing temperatures. We had some freezing rain, a little bit of snow, and I've pushed these tires through all conditions. So I have a pretty good idea, a pretty solid opinion of these tires currently at this point. So I wanted to share it with you today if you are in the market for a very, very budget-friendly tire. Although budget-friendly they may be, are they indeed worth the money? Again, 275 35 19 in the rear, 255 40 19 up front. At these sizes, the tires are just over $100 a piece. So you're looking at around $450 for a complete set, which isn't too shabby. Starting with looks, these tires have a performance-inspired tread pattern, which I like. I'm not into the super aggressive, super obnoxious, flame pattern carved into the treads, or some weird directional nonsense. These look sporty, they look athletic, but they're not overly exaggerated, which I appreciate. As with tread patterns, my feelings overlap into sidewall designs. I don't need a bunch of textures, a bunch of designs, a bunch of extra letters, and all this other nonsense. A nice, classic, subtle letter design with, the basic numbers and information that we need on the sidewall, that is sufficient. We don't need to get crazy here. And I think Lexani hit the mark with that as well. There's probably a little bit more here than I actually need or care to see. The cross hatching and this and that's not necessary in my opinion, but nonetheless, I think they did a lot better job than a lot of tires these days. The Lexani LX20 has a temperature rating of a tread wear rating of 320, so soft but not too soft, and a speed rating of 100 W, so capable of speeds higher than I'll ever even get close to approaching in this car. So that would lead one to believe that they are super high performing tires, which is the category that they do fall in. Again, 275 35 19s in the rear. These are 9.5 inch wheels. They sit pretty flush on a 9.5 in the rear at a 275. The front, again, 255 40 19, and there's just slightly more than flush, just a slight bit of stretch. There's kind of a good angle there showing that just slight stretch, 255 on a 9.5 inch wheel. Now, with how the tires fit on the wheels themselves in consideration, the sidewalls of these tires actually are relatively stiff, which I am a fan of. They track and handle well because of the sidewall stiffness, which is excellent. And again, a lot of that has to do with how they fit on the wheel. But with a low profile tire and a relatively stiff sidewall, you will feel imperfections in the road. Now, they don't rattle your teeth out of your brain case or anything like that, but you can definitely tell you're on a lower profile tire that does have a relatively stiff sidewall. No big deal. I like it. It's part of having a performance tire. Now, with that being said, road noise is very, very minimal, if any at all. A lot of times tires will change characteristics over time. After you wear the tires in, they'll sound a bit different, they'll feel a bit different, but I have to say the consistency of these Lexani LX20s has been great. They sound just as quiet as the day that I had them installed, which is excellent. And they are certainly quieter than the factory run flats that come on these tires. Those things are obnoxious. So in terms of overall looks and ride comfort and quality on these Lexani LX20s, after probably 11 or 12,000 miles or so, I'm very, very happy with them. Now, of course, that's only the half of it, right? We got to know how these tires actually perform. How do they handle abuse? That's the first question. Well, this being a rear-wheel drive car, we obviously can anticipate the rear wheels or the rear the rear tires wearing out quicker than the fronts, which is the case. The rear tires are due to be changed. You saw at the beginning of this video the types of abuse that these tires have put up with over the last year or so, and it was significant, and probably more than most people will put their car through on a regular yearly basis. But with that being said, the rear tires are ready to be replaced. That 320 tread wear rating is showing itself. The fronts, however, have really held up to abuse quite well. When I had the factory run flats on this car, I took the car to the mountains. I spent probably 2 or 3 hours ripping around the turns, and when I got home, chunks of the shoulder were actually breaking away from the tire itself. I've had several runs in the mountains. One particular run was about 175 miles in a single day, with very few stopping periods. So the tires were hot, they were taking a lot of abuse, and they handled it very well. Now keep in mind, these are $100 tires if you were to purchase them. Not only that, they don't need to be replaced. They have at least another 10, 12, 15, 20,000 miles left on them. I've rotated them once because we are lowered and there's a slight bit of camber on the front wheels just because of the geometry of our suspension. So they were just getting a little bit worn slightly on the very inside edge of both tires. Both symmetrical. Both tires look exactly the same on the inside tread. So just rotating them one side or the other. They're not directional tires. They just have to have the outside of the tire toward the outside. So just swapping them, no big deal. Took care of the issue. They'll just continue to wear evenly. In terms of daily driving, these tires are really good. Again, I alluded to road noise being very minimal, if any at all, which is pleasant, especially if you're driving to work early in the morning and you're coming home late in the afternoon. The last thing you want is to have road noise overpower the tone of your beautiful exhaust system. They actually handle water really well. We get a lot of downpours in the springtime here in Greenville, South Carolina. We're kind of on the edge of the mountains, and we get some pretty heavy rainstorms. They handle rain without issue. I am not concerned. Obviously, if you turn traction control off and you hit a corner and you get into the pedal a little bit, you're going to bring the rear end around, which shouldn't surprise you, honestly, especially with a tire like this. But in regular driving situations, whether you're on a 45 mile an hour side road or you're 75 miles on the interstate, there is no lack of confidence in these tires' ability to maintain grip. I was actually pleasantly surprised at the tires' ability to handle cold weather conditions as well. Again, we're in South Carolina and we don't get super cold temperatures, and we only get a couple of days of snow per year. But with a ultra high performance summer tire, expectations are generally pretty low in cold weather conditions. Now, when I talk about cold weather in Greenville, South Carolina, I'm talking about maybe 20 degrees, maybe just below freezing. But rather than putting winter tires on this car, I just kept the Lexanis on because, well, I probably had an idea of making this video at some point in the future. So here we are, and again, the tires handled quite well. I would not recommend these as an all-weather tire for places like Minnesota or Massachusetts, but if you're in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, basically the southern half of the United States, I would say I would certainly be comfortable keeping these tires on the car all year round, which is saying a lot for an ultra high performance summer tire. Now let's talk about the real performance capabilities of these tires. Again, I've had them on several mountain runs, both in cool temperatures, hot temperatures, wet conditions, and of course some dry conditions, and they perform really well. Their lateral grip is superb, again, especially for $100 tires. Of course, overall width and suspension setup makes a big difference in how the car handles overall, but considering, again, one more time, that these are $100 tires, the fact that they can hold grip for a big, heavy car pushing through the corners in the mountains, that says a lot. With the factory run flats, I felt like I was really fighting the car in the corners. The car was wanting to push through the tires. There just wasn't a lot of grip. Understeer was unbelievable, but swapping to these, of course, again, wider tires, a little softer compound, and just a more performance-oriented tire. The car really did what I wanted it to do. And so here you can see this is the front tire, and it had been rotated. So this was the inside edge about 1,000 miles ago or so, and still really doesn't look all that bad. So this would have been the inside edge of these tires after all of the miles and all of the abuse that this car's taken over the last year and a half or so. And still there's a ton of tread left. So I really don't see any reason to change out these front tires, even though we're shopping for some different tires at the moment. These have performed really, really well, and there's a ton of tread left on them. So got some decisions to make. So with really high marks in regard to everyday driving situations, handling different weather conditions, and the high marks that I give them for lateral grip and mountain runs, my negative comments come into play when we talk about the rear tires. We're only making about 335 horsepower to the wheels and about 280 foot-pounds of torque, 276 if you want to get picky. But trying to launch this car from a dead stop, there's absolutely no grip. I can't imagine these tires on a 3.0T where you're able to brake boost and launch at a higher RPM. They would just spin like crazy. Now, if you were in an all-wheel drive setup, they, I'm sure, could handle the additional torque, but in a rear-wheel drive setup with this much power and torque, albeit not that much, it just overpowers the tires really easily. Even on a 275 rear tire, it's not uncommon to break loose through first, second, and third gear. You could see in a clip earlier in this video with my mom as a passenger, we went through 1, 2, and 3, no problem, and really smoked them up. Now, we were probably spinning one tire, but that's a different story altogether. So my overall assessment of these tires is pretty simple. If you are a typical kind of spirited driver who likes to hit the corners every once in a while and don't do a whole lot of stoplight to stoplight racing, these are perfect. They'll certainly perform better on a prepped surface than they would on the street in terms of rear-wheel drive grip, but I'm not going to recommend these as a drag racing tire per se. However, their lateral grip is exceptional, especially for a $100 tire, and the relatively stiff sidewall prevents tire roll, really inspiring confidence in the corners, which is something that I certainly look for. Super nice performance-inspired tread pattern, a classic sidewall design, and they perform really well in a number of different conditions. I would certainly purchase these tires for myself. Again, a great tire for the typical spirited driver who likes a little bit of additional performance but doesn't want to break the bank. This is a great recommendation. The Lexani LX20, links in the description below. Pick you up a set if you're looking for a quality tire that doesn't break the bank. Highly recommended.